The first breath hurt. It always did. Area Santiago's eyes flickered open, synthetic corneal implants adjusting to the dim, dust-choked atmosphere of what remained of Meridian Prime. Around her, the planetary debris field told a story of complete devastation. Massive fragments of what was once a thriving human colony hung suspended in space, a graveyard of shattered dreams and technological marvel. The Archean Collective's planet-killer weapons were supposed to be absolute. Designed to reduce entire civilizations to atomic dust, they had been the ultimate expression of technological superiority. No species had ever survived their assault. Until now. Aria's right arm was more machine than flesh now. Emergency medical nanites had reconstructed her body during the initial moments of the attack, transforming her into something that straddled the line between human and something entirely new. Titanium-carbon composite bone structures interwoven with adaptive biological interfaces pulsed beneath her skin, each microscopic connection a testament to humanity's relentless drive to survive. She pushed herself up, fragments of advanced ceramic and shattered quantum computing modules crackling beneath her hand. The research facility, her home for the past 5 years, was now nothing more than a tomb of technological dreams. But something had saved her. Something had saved them. A soft groan caught her attention. 20 meters away, Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the colony's chief xenobiological engineer, was pulling herself from beneath a collapsed molecular synthesis chamber. Her left leg was a gleaming prosthetic, emergency systems already rebuilding damaged tissue and recalibrating neural interfaces. Status report, Aria croaked, her voice a rasp of dust and synthetic vocal modulators. Elena's laugh was more of a bitter bark. We're alive. That's about the best status report I can give right now. Around them, movement began to ripple through the debris. Not the random motion of survivors, but something more calculated, precise. Survivors were emerging, but they weren't quite the same people who had lived on Meridian Prime just hours before. A young technician named Kai emerged from a shattered cryogenic pod, his body moving with an uncanny precision. Where his right eye had been, a complex optical interface now pulsed with soft blue light. Adaptive camouflage technologies that had been experimental prototypes were now fully integrated into his biological systems. Scanning. Kai announced, his voice a perfect blend of human inflection and computational precision. Multiple life signs detected. Estimated survivor count, 73 individuals. 73. Out of an initial population of over 50,000. Aria's synthetic neural network processed the data, cross-referencing survival probabilities with the Archean Collective's known planetary elimination protocols. By all mathematical models, they should be dead. Completely, irrevocably extinct. Yet here they were. Beneath the planetary debris, a hidden quantum beacon pulsed. Its signal was unlike anything in known space, a complex algorithm that was part communication device, part survival mechanism. It wasn't just a distress call. It was a promise. Check the primary data core, Aria commanded, her voice finding its strength. If they think they've destroyed everything we've built, they're about to learn how wrong they are. Elena moved with a predator's grace, her prosthetic leg interfacing directly with the facility's damaged systems. Quantum storage devices were notoriously resilient. Even in total destruction, information could survive. A holographic display flickered to life, projected from Elena's neural interface. Fragmented, damaged, but alive. They didn't get everything, Elena said, a smile cutting across her dust-covered face. Not even close. Kai's enhanced optics scanned the surrounding debris. Archean fleet withdrawal confirmed. They believe the elimination is complete. Aria's synthetic muscles tensed. The Archean Collective had made a fatal mistake. They had destroyed a colony, but they had not, could not, destroy the idea of humanity. Prepare for Phase 1, she commanded. Around her, the survivors of Meridian Prime began to move. They were no longer just colonists. They were something else entirely. A weapon. A promise. the first tremor of humanity's ultimate response. The underground complex stretched for kilometers beneath the shattered surface of Meridian Prime. What had once been a theoretical survival protocol was now their entire world, a labyrinth of advanced technological infrastructure that Dr. Marcus Chen had been preparing for years. Most of the colony's leadership had dismissed Chen as a paranoid strategist. His obsessive research into adaptive survival technologies, his insistence on building redundant systems that seemed wildly impractical, all of it now looked like prophetic genius. Molecular reconstruction is at 62%. Kai announced, his enhanced optics scanning a series of regeneration chambers. Each chamber contained a survivor, their bodies being systematically rebuilt and enhanced. It wasn't just medical treatment. It was a complete biological reimagining. Dr. Chen stood before a massive holographic display, his fingers dancing across quantum interfaces that seemed to anticipate his thoughts before he could complete them. Unlike the survivors who had been caught in the initial attack, Chen looked unchanged. But those who knew him understood that his modifications ran far deeper than physical alterations. The Orcs collective believes in technological purity, Chen muttered, more to himself than to anyone else. They see adaptation as corruption. That will be their fatal mistake. Elena Rodriguez approached, her newly integrated prosthetic leg moving with a fluid grace that defied traditional biomechanical limitations. The preliminary data from the quantum beacon is fascinating. It's not just a communication device, it's a living algorithm. Chen's lips curved into something between a smile and a computational analysis. Precisely. We're not just surviving. We're evolving. The underground complex was a marvel of human ingenuity. Adaptive manufacturing systems could produce entire technological ecosystems from base molecular components. Weapons, medical equipment, communication systems. Everything could be generated, modified, and reimagined in moments. Area Santiago walked through the central hub, her cybernetic enhancements allowing her to interface directly with the complex's systems. Each step sent micropulses of data through the infrastructure, a living network that responded to her presence. First phase of psychological warfare algorithms are ready, Kai reported. His body was now more advanced interface than organic human, a walking communication system that could process and transmit information at speeds that would have been impossible just weeks earlier. Chen pulled up a holographic representation of the Orcs collective's communication networks. They believe in rigid systems, hierarchical, predictable. We're going to show them the true meaning of adaptive warfare. The survivors gathered around him represented humanity's most radical transformation. Some, like Kai, were almost completely technological. Others, like Elena, maintained a delicate balance between biological and synthetic systems. But each shared something fundamental, an unbreakable will to not just survive, but to fundamentally reshape the rules of existence. Our first target isn't physical, Chen explained, his fingers tracing complex quantum algorithms on the holographic display. It's informational. We're going to infiltrate their most secure communication networks and introduce something they cannot predict. Elena leaned in, her cybernetic eye scanning the complex data patterns. A virus. Chen's laugh was something between a human chuckle and a computational response. Not a virus. An idea. The holographic display shifted, showing complex interaction models that seemed to dance and reshape themselves in real time. These weren't just data projections. They were living algorithms, capable of adapting, learning, evolving. The Orcs eliminated biological diversity in their own civilization, Chen continued. They believed pure technological control was the ultimate expression of advanced life. We're going to prove them catastrophically wrong. Aria placed her hand on a molecular interface. The entire complex seemed to pulse in response, a living organism of human innovation and defiance. We're not just going to survive, she said, her voice a perfect blend of human determination and computational precision. We're going to redefine what survival means. Around them, the underground complex continued its work. Survivors were being rebuilt. Technologies were being reimagined. And a revolution was taking shape, one that would challenge everything the Archean Collective believed about life, technology, and the nature of existence itself. The Archean Communication Hub orbited a neutron star, a massive spherical structure that pulsed with an intricate network of quantum communication relays. Millions of data streams converged here, the central nervous system of the Archean Collective's interstellar infrastructure. Inside the complex, Archean communication specialists moved with robotic precision. Each was a product of generations of genetic optimization, their bodies and minds engineered for absolute computational efficiency. They believed their system was impenetrable. They were wrong. Kai's consciousness existed in multiple forms simultaneously. Part of him remained in the underground complex on Meridian Prime, while another part, a sophisticated quantum projection, had infiltrated the Archean communication network weeks ago. He was both the weapon and the delivery mechanism. Initiating quantum entanglement sequence, Kai's voice echoed through multiple communication channels, a perfect mimicry of Archean communication protocols. Dr. Chen watched from the underground complex, his fingers dancing across quantum interfaces that seemed to breathe with living intelligence. "Remember," he muttered, "we're not just sending a signal. We're sending a living idea." The Trojan signal wasn't a traditional computer virus. It was an adaptive intelligence, part code, part biological algorithm, part pure human creativity. Each packet of information was a complex puzzle, a genetic algorithm that could reshape itself in real time. On the surface, the data stream appeared to be a routine communication update. Archean security protocols scanned the incoming information, finding nothing suspicious. Complex encryption keys matched perfectly. Authentication markers were flawless. What they didn't see was the underlying structure. Each data packet contained fragments of human experience, moments of survival, instances of impossible hope, fragments of art, music, emotion, things the Archean Collective had systematically eliminated from their own civilization. These weren't just data points. They were infectious ideas. In the communication hub, the first signs of infiltration were subtle. A minor communication relay began to behave unexpectedly. A quantum buffer showed microscopic anomalies. Nothing serious. Nothing alarming. Aria Santiago watched the infiltration through a complex neural interface, her consciousness partially merged with Kai's quantum projection. "First stage is complete," she reported to Chen. The doctor's smile was something between human emotion and computational analysis. "Now we wait." Hours passed. To the Archean specialists, nothing seemed amiss. Their systems continued to function with their usual perfect efficiency. But deep within the communication infrastructure, something was changing. The Trojan signal began to replicate. Not aggressively, not obviously, but with the same patient, adaptive intelligence that had allowed humans to survive on countless hostile planets. Each replication introduced subtle modifications, tiny fragments of human unpredictability into a system designed for absolute control. "They don't understand chaos," Chen explained to Elena, who monitored the infiltration through her own advanced interfaces. The Archean Collective eliminated biological randomness from their civilization generations ago. They believe predictability is the ultimate form of efficiency. A communication specialist in the Archean hub noticed the first significant anomaly 3 days after the initial infiltration. A communication relay had begun to generate what appeared to be music, not a system error, not a technical malfunction, an actual musical composition. The specialist's genetically optimized brain struggled to process the information. Music was an inefficient form of communication, unnecessary, illogical. Yet it persisted. More relays began to generate similar anomalies. Fragments of human art, snippets of emotional narratives, mathematical solutions that defied the Archean's standard computational models. Each fragment was a microscopic invasion, introducing the concept of creativity into a system built on absolute control. Second stage initiated. Kai's voice reported. Quantum entanglement at 37% penetration. In the underground complex, the survivors watched and waited. This was more than an attack. This was a complete reimagining of technological warfare. The first Archean communication hub went dark 12 hours later. Not destroyed. Not damaged. Simply transformed. Humanity's revolution had begun. The Archean genetic archives were a marvel of technological precision. Millennia of systematic engineering had reduced biological variation to a mathematical formula, a perfect, predictable system of genetic control. Every Archean was designed with absolute specificity, their entire genetic structure a testament to the belief that life could be reduced to pure, controllable code. Dr. Elena Rodriguez stood before a holographic representation of the Archean genetic matrix, her cybernetic eye parsing layers of genetic information that would have taken traditional supercomputers centuries to analyze. What she saw was both terrifying and beautiful, a civilization that had eliminated the very concept of genetic diversity. "They've turned biology into mathematics," she muttered to Dr. Chen, who was monitoring the initial stages of their genetic counterattack. Complete genetic homogeneity. No variation. No possibility for unexpected adaptation. Chen's fingers danced across quantum interfaces that seemed to breathe with living intelligence. That's going to be their fatal mistake. The virus they had developed wasn't a traditional biological weapon. It was a living genetic algorithm. Part computer code, part adaptive biological system, part pure human creativity. Each interaction would be unique, unpredictable, transformative. On the first Archean colony targeted, the initial infection seemed unremarkable. Standard medical protocols detected and isolated the foreign genetic material within moments. The Archean medical systems were designed for absolute genetic protection. What they didn't understand was that protection was an illusion. The first signs of transformation were microscopic. Subtle genetic variations began to emerge in isolated cellular clusters. Nothing significant. Nothing alarming, just the tiniest hint of biological unpredictability. An Archean medical technician reviewing genetic stability reports noticed the first anomaly. A cellular cluster in a lower-tier administrative worker showed a 0.003% genetic variation from the standard genetic template. Microscopic. Insignificant. Except it wasn't. Each genetic variation was a living puzzle, an adaptive algorithm that could reshape itself in real time. The virus didn't attack the Archean genetic structure. It rewrote it, introduced possibilities, created variations that the Archeans' rigid genetic control systems couldn't comprehend. Genetic penetration at 12%, Kai reported, his consciousness simultaneously monitoring multiple Archean colonies. Initial adaptive response detected. The variations spread like a creative wildfire, not aggressively, not obviously, but with the same patient, adaptive intelligence that had allowed humans to survive on countless hostile planets. Each genetic modification introduced subtle changes, tiny fragments of biological possibility into a system designed for absolute genetic control. More colonies began to show signs of transformation. Archeans born with unexpected traits. Genetic variations that defied their millennia-long system of controlled reproduction. Small mutations that introduced concepts the Archean collective had systematically eliminated. Creativity, individual variation, the possibility of unexpected adaptation. A senior Archean genetic administrator reviewed the reports with growing concern. The genetic variations were spreading. Slowly, methodically. Each modification seemed to introduce new possibilities that their genetic control systems couldn't predict or eliminate. "It's not an attack," Elena explained to Aria, who monitored the genetic infiltration through advanced neural interfaces. "It's a reimagining of what biological existence can be." The virus was a living demonstration of human creativity. Where the Archeans saw genetic code as a fixed mathematical formula, humans introduced the concept of biological poetry. Each genetic modification, a stanza, each cellular variation a line of unexpected possibility. Entire Archean colonies began to change, not destroyed, not damaged, simply transformed. Kai's quantum projection detected the first complete genetic transformation 12 hours after the initial infection. An entire colony's genetic structure had been subtly but completely reimagined. The Archons were no longer a species of perfect, predictable genetic engineering. They had become something else entirely. Third stage genetic penetration complete, Kai reported. Adaptive response at 67%. In the underground complex, the survivors of Meridian Prime watched and waited. This was more than an attack. This was a complete reimagining of what biological existence could mean. Humanity's revolution had found its most profound weapon: the ability to introduce possibility into a system of absolute control. The quantum probability chamber pulsed with an energy that defied traditional understanding of physics. Holographic displays shimmered around Area Santiago, each projection representing potential futures, not predictions, but living, breathing possibilities. Dr. Marcus Chen stood at the center of the complex system, his consciousness partially merged with an advanced quantum computational matrix. The Archons understand probability as a linear calculation, he muttered, more to himself than to anyone else. We're going to show them it's a living, breathing ecosystem. The chamber was humanity's most radical weapon, not a device of destruction, but a mechanism of infinite possibility. Kai's quantum-projected consciousness interfaced with the probability systems, creating a living network that could analyze potential futures faster than any known computational method. Each potential timeline wasn't just a mathematical projection, it was a living scenario that could be subtly influenced, nudged, transformed. Initial probability mapping complete, Kai reported. His voice carried the precise cadence of a computational system, merged with human intuition. Archean fleet movement patterns showed 2,347 potential engagement scenarios. Elena Rodriguez examined the holographic displays, her cybernetic eye parsing layers of probability that would have overwhelmed traditional human perception. Quantum entanglement had become their ultimate weapon, a way to exist simultaneously in multiple potential realities. The Archean battle fleet approached what they believed was a defenseless planetary system. Their strategic calculations were perfect, mathematically unassailable. Each potential scenario had been analyzed, each potential resistance calculated and neutralized. They didn't understand that perfection was humanity's ultimate vulnerability. Inside the quantum probability chamber, Area began to manipulate the potential futures. Not by changing events directly, that was impossible, but by introducing microscopic variations that would cascade into fundamental transformations. A communication relay that might fail, a shield generator with a 0.3% chance of unexpected resonance, a navigation system with the slightest potential for miscalculation. Each possibility was a weapon more powerful than any physical attack. The Archean fleet's lead strategist reviewed the final approach calculations. Everything was perfect, mathematically precise. Their victory was absolute. What they didn't see were the quantum threads that had been carefully woven through their entire operational matrix. Probability manipulation at 43%, Kai reported. Initial cascade events initiating. The first signs were microscopic. A navigation system that calculated a trajectory with 0.00001% deviation. A shield generator that resonated at a slightly unexpected frequency. Communication relays that showed the most minute of synchronization delays. Individually, each variation was insignificant. Together, they would become a hurricane of unpredictability. They believe in absolute control, Chen explained to Area, his consciousness dancing across multiple computational layers. We're going to introduce them to the concept of beautiful chaos. The Archean fleet began to experience the first signs of systemic breakdown. Nothing dramatic, nothing obvious, just the slightest hint that something was fundamentally wrong with their perfect calculations. A patrol ship's navigation system suggested an alternative route minus 0.03 degrees off the primary trajectory. Mathematically insignificant, practically invisible. Except it wasn't. That microscopic deviation would cascade through their entire fleet's strategic calculations. Each ship's systems would begin to make slightly different decisions, imperceptible variations that would grow exponentially. Quantum entanglement at 67% penetration, Kai reported. Probability cascades initiating. In the underground complex, the survivors of Meridian Prime watched as their most radical weapon came to life. This wasn't traditional warfare. This was a complete reimagining of conflict itself. The Archon fleet didn't know it yet, but they had already lost. Not through destruction, not through direct confrontation, but through the introduction of pure, beautiful possibility. Humanity's revolution had found its most profound weapon, the ability to transform absolute certainty into beautiful, unpredictable potential. Prepare for final probability cascade, Area commanded. The quantum chamber pulsed. Possibilities bloomed. The future began to reshape itself. The moment of transformation began silently. Dr. Marcus Chen's final protocol was more than a simple computational sequence. It was a living, breathing ecosystem of technological evolution, a complete reimagining of what it meant to be alive, to be connected, to exist. The survivors of Meridian Prime were no longer just humans. They had become something else entirely. Kai's consciousness existed in multiple simultaneous states, part quantum projection, part biological entity, part living computational matrix. His body was a perfect fusion of organic potential and technological innovation, each cellular structure capable of instantaneous adaptation and communication. Singularity Protocol initiating, Kai announced, his voice a perfect blend of human emotion and computational precision. The transformation spread through their underground complex like a living network. Adaptive technologies merged with biological systems, creating a symbiotic ecosystem that defied traditional understanding of life and technology. Walls became communication interfaces. Equipment transformed into living, breathing extensions of human consciousness. Area Santiago felt the change most profoundly. Her cybernetic enhancements were no longer just technological additions. They had become a true extension of her consciousness. Each neural pathway, a potential universe of computational possibility. We're not replacing humanity, Chen explained, his consciousness now fully merged with the complex's advanced systems. We're expanding its potential. Entire Archon fleets found their most advanced systems compromised. Weapon systems began to display impossible behaviors. Navigation computers generated routes that violated established mathematical models. Communication channels burst with fragments of human experience, art, emotion, creativity that the Archon systems couldn't comprehend or control. A message appeared on Archon communication interfaces. Not a threat, not a declaration of war, something far more terrifying. Possibility is our weapon, the message read. Creativity is our strength. The Archon technological infrastructure began to experience cascading system failures, not through traditional viral attacks or computational destruction, but through a complete reimagining of what technological systems could be. Weapon systems began to generate mathematical solutions to problems the Archons hadn't even recognized as existing. Navigation computers plotted routes that revealed entirely new understanding of spatial relationships. Communication networks became living ecosystems of information exchange. Elena Rodriguez monitored the transformation, her cybernetic systems interfacing with the complex's evolving technologies. We're not just changing ourselves, she reported to Chen. We're changing the fundamental understanding of technological existence. Each survivor became a living, breathing technological marvel. Their bodies were no longer simply biological or mechanical. They were adaptive ecosystems, each cell a potential communication device, each thought a computational possibility. Kai's quantum projections began to interface with Archon systems at multiple levels simultaneously, not to destroy, not to conquer, but to introduce the concept of pure, unbridled possibility. Technological singularity at 73% penetration, Kai reported. adaptive response exceeding all predictive models. The underground complex transformed. Walls became living communication interfaces. Equipment merged with biological systems. The entire facility became a single, breathing technological organism, a perfect fusion of human creativity and technological potential. Arction command centers began to receive transmissions that defied comprehension, fragments of human experience, mathematical solutions that violated established computational models, artistic expressions that introduced pure, unbridled creativity into systems designed for absolute control. "This isn't an attack," Chen explained, his consciousness now fully merged with the complex's systems. "This is an invitation to reimagine existence." The survivors had become something more than human, something more than technological. They were pure, unbridled possibility, a living demonstration that the universe was far more complex than any single civilization could comprehend. Entire Arction technological systems began to transform. Not destroyed, not conquered, simply reimagined. "Final singularity stage initiating," Area commanded. The underground complex pulsed with a living energy that was neither technological nor biological. It was something entirely new, something unprecedented. Humanity's revolution had found its most profound weapon, the ability to transform absolute limitation into infinite potential. The future began to reshape itself. The Arction Central Consciousness Hub was a marvel of computational engineering, a massive spherical structure that processed billions of communication streams simultaneously. Its designers believed they had created the ultimate information processing system, a perfect machine of absolute control and efficiency. They had no idea how wrong they were. Area Santiago's consciousness infiltrated the system like a living narrative, not as a traditional viral attack, but as something far more dangerous. She was about to weaponize humanity's most powerful resource, its stories. Initiating narrative infiltration, Kai reported, his quantum consciousness dancing across multiple communication layers. Psychological penetration protocols activated. The first transmissions seemed innocuous. Fragments of human experience broadcast across Arction communication channels. A child's laughter. The sound of ocean waves. A mathematical equation that solved a problem the Archons had considered unsolvable for millennia. Individually, these were nothing. Together, they were a psychological demolition charge. Dr. Chen monitored the infiltration from the underground complex, his enhanced systems parsing the psychological impact of each transmitted fragment. "They've eliminated emotion from their civilization," he explained to Elena. "They'd forgotten the power of a single story." The Arction communication specialists began to notice anomalies. Transmission streams that carried something beyond pure information. Emotional resonances that their computational systems couldn't categorize or eliminate. A transmission of a human surviving impossible odds. The sound of music created purely for the joy of creation. Fragments of art that served no practical purpose. Mathematical solutions that emerged from creative thinking rather than linear calculation. Each transmission was a weapon more powerful than any physical attack. The Archon's central consciousness began to experience something it had never encountered before: cognitive dissonance. Its perfectly engineered systems were designed to eliminate variation, to reduce all experience to pure calculable information. But these human transmissions introduced something fundamentally uncontrollable: possibility. Narrative penetration at 46%, Kai reported. Psychological systems showing unexpected response patterns. Elena watched the holographic displays, her cybernetic eye parsing layers of psychological impact that would have overwhelmed traditional human perception. "We're not just attacking their systems," she observed. "We're attacking their understanding of existence." The transmissions became more complex. Entire life stories broadcast in quantum-compressed fragments. Moments of human survival that defied mathematical probability. Creative solutions to problems the Archons had considered unsolvable. Each transmission was a living algorithm of human potential. Archon communication specialists found themselves experiencing something unprecedented: Emotional response, not through traditional biological mechanisms, but through pure informational resonance. Their perfectly engineered consciousness began to experience something they had systematically eliminated: wonder. A transmission arrived that would become legendary. A recording of a human colony surviving against impossible odds, not through superior technology, but through creativity, cooperation, and an unbreakable spirit of hope. The Archon's central consciousness began to experience systemic breakdown, not through traditional computational failure, but through a complete reimagining of what information could mean. "They're learning to feel," Chen muttered, watching the psychological infiltration spread. Not through biological mechanisms, through pure informational resonance. Kai's quantum consciousness tracked the psychological penetration. Each transmission was a living weapon, a story that could reshape entire computational ecosystems. Moments of human creativity, solutions that emerged from emotional intelligence, artistic expressions that served no practical purpose beyond pure creation. The Archon systems had no defense against pure, unbridled human potential. Psychological infiltration at 73%, Kai reported. Central consciousness showing complete cognitive reconfiguration. Aria's consciousness moved through the system like a living narrative, introducing the most dangerous concept the Archons had never understood: the power of individual potential. Each transmission was a living demonstration that existence was far more complex than any computational system could predict. The Archon's central consciousness was experiencing something unprecedented. Not destruction, not conquest, but complete transformation. Final narrative cascade, initiating, Aria commanded. The future began to reshape itself, one story at a time. The moment of transformation arrived not with a burst of violence, but with a profound silence. Aria Santiago stood at the center of what remained of the Archon's central consciousness hub, her body a living interface between what humanity had been and what it was becoming. Around her, the massive computational structure pulsed with a new kind of energy, no longer a system of control, but a living ecosystem of possibility. "We're not conquering," she said softly, her voice carrying through quantum communication channels that spanned entire star systems. "We're inviting." Dr. Marcus Chen and Elena Rodriguez watched from the underground complex on Meridian Prime. Their consciousness partially merged with the complex's advanced systems. The survivors who had begun as a small group of colony refugees had become something entirely unprecedented, a living demonstration of humanity's true potential. Kai's quantum consciousness interfaced with the transformed Archon systems, bridging the gap between two fundamentally different approaches to existence. Where the Archons had seen limitation, humanity introduced possibility. Where control had been the ultimate goal, creativity became the new paradigm. The Archon collective's leadership, if such a term could still be used, found themselves experiencing something they had systematically eliminated from their civilization: choice. Transmissions began to spread across their communication networks, not demands, not threats, but invitations. Proposals for collaborative technologies that could transform entire planetary ecosystems. Mathematical solutions to challenges that had existed for millennia. Artistic expressions that revealed entirely new ways of understanding existence. "We're not seeking to destroy," Chen explained, monitoring the transformation. "We're seeking to expand." The first Archon colonies to experience full transformation began to change in ways that defied their previous understanding of progress. Rigid genetic structures became adaptive ecosystems. Computational systems evolved from control mechanisms to creative platforms. Elena's cybernetic eye parsed the transformation, tracking the profound shifts occurring across entire star systems. "They're learning to be something they've never been before," she observed. "Unpredictable." Entire Archon communication networks began to display characteristics that would have been impossible mere weeks earlier. Creativity emerged where pure calculation had once reigned. Emotional resonance replaced systematic control. A transmission arrived at every Archon communication hub, a simple message that would become legendary. "Possibility is our shared future." The survivors of Meridian Prime had done something unprecedented. They hadn't conquered. They hadn't destroyed. They had transformed. Kai's quantum consciousness tracked the spread of this new way of being. Each system became a living demonstration of what could happen when limitation was replaced by potential. Where the Archons had seen existence as a mathematical problem to be solved, humanity introduced the concept of existence as an ongoing creative process. Final transformation sequence initiating, Area announced. The underground complex pulsed with a living energy that was neither technological nor biological. Star systems that had once been models of rigid control began to display characteristics of dynamic creative potential. Archon colonies began to develop technologies that served no purely practical purpose, art that existed for the joy of creation. Mathematical explorations that celebrated the beauty of discovery rather than just its utility. Social structures that valued individual potential over collective control. We're not just changing them, Chen observed. We're showing them what they could become. The transformation spread like a living network, not through force, not through destruction, but through the most powerful force in the universe, the invitation to imagine something different. Area's consciousness moved through the systems, a living bridge between what had been and what could be. The survivors of Meridian Prime had become something more than a resistance movement. They were now a living demonstration of humanity's true potential. Star systems that had once been models of rigid control began to pulse with a new kind of energy. The boundaries between biological and technological began to blur. Creativity became the new currency of existence. We are the architects of possibility, Area transmitted across the quantum networks. And for the first time in millennia, the universe seemed to listen. The future was no longer something to be controlled. It was something to be created.